Okay, welcome back. Move the camera over to the drill press and we'll see how much you can see from a fixed position. If I had an assistant or something that could keep a camera on the end of a boom gadget and zooming in and out, that would be better, but I can't run the machinery and do that at the same time, so we'll give it a go and hope for the best. Anyhow, this particular arrangement here is the key to it all in the following way. It's mounted on a XY table, which means you can control it moving like so. It doesn't go up and down, but the whole table does with a different crank. So that lets you zero in on your target. And this red L-shaped piece over here, it's called an angle block, and you can get them in different, like 60 degrees, 45 degrees and stuff. Machinists use them. And I got one that's 90 degrees and had it modified by a machinist for my purposes and drilled out so I could mount it to this table. And also there's a 90-degree groove that runs vertically down its entire length. And then a matching faceplate, exactly the same dimensions as on the left side here, is another plate on the right-hand side. It's also got the groove deal here. Now, what surprises people that visit my shop when they first see this is this thing is sloppy. And if they see all this precision gear and think, what in the world, that guy that made that for you ripped you off. And no, that's actually by request. I had to convince him, not convince him, but demonstrate to him what I had in mind. And it's the key to the whole thing. And before I explain it, well, no, it'd be better if you had a visual here. Okay, this is our bang stem. And you notice that the end of it has been wrapped with hockey tape. Hockey tape is magic. It's Scotch tape on steroids. It's stretchy, it's tough, and if you put it on with reasonable tightness, I mean, you don't have to go crazy or anything, it's like a rubber band almost, and it creates a plastic coating around anything that you wrap it on that's arguably as hard as if you dipped it into some liquid plastic and then let it harden. And that is the key to not mangling up or denting the shape. That and some pads that we put in here. Now these are just leather, ordinary. It's like 5 ounce, maybe 6 ounce leather, cut to fit between these guide screw things. Now we take the stem, put it in here, get it almost down to where it's flush, but not quite. And here's what happens. You want to snug it up, but you don't have to go squishing anything enough to damage it. The stem is padded both by the tape and by the leather. And here's what happens. As long as the gap at the top of the plates is the same on the top and the bottom, and this is 14 and a half, 14 and a half, 14 and a half. As long as the spacing on all four corners is equal, and all you do is measure it. Millimeters are easier than sixteenths and stuff in this case. Here's what you get. Whatever is clamped between those two plates is automatically vertical going this way. Because if it's wider at the bottom, this center line is then tilted one direction. And then the opposite. This is massively exaggerated for illustration, but you get the idea. And if it's closer together at the bottom, then the center line, the airway of the stem, is going to be running at an angle. But as long as you put the right amount of tape on the end of that, and it varies according to the stem. This is a pretty dramatic one. It's short and thick, both. But it took more tape than normal. A long, slender one, hardly any at all. And then you just mount it in there. It doesn't have to be squished hard to resist it from the cutting action of the drill bit either, because the tape on the end of that is fitting into the V-block, or the V-cuts in there, and it can't rotate. There, you don't have to squeeze it hard enough to stop it from spinning, because that's mechanically impossible at any strength or force that we're going to use. So that is it. And then we take the best way to align this thing is to take a drill blank. It's just a piece of tool steel rod. It's sold in a smooth form for people who like to make their own drill bits. And don't use a pointer, but rather one that's chosen to be exactly the same size as the hole that you have. Now I'm reaching funny if you kind of looks weird here. It's trying to avoid the camera and tripod. And you line that up with the screws until it gently goes in there, like so. And then we swap out this rod for whatever drill that we've chosen. In this case, it's this one. Voila. Fire it up, drill it out. So, might as well, as long as it's all set up, I just waste it. I can edit it out if we don't need it. One moment. Alrighty. And that is that. We now have our hole in an irregularly shaped stem with no damage to the stem. And it's coaxial. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, there's a second one here that I'm going to stop. Well, no, I guess I won't stop the camera. What the hell? This is a difficult one. It's both very short, and the fishtail here, and it's curved. And that keeps us from being able to do it the same way. If we mounted this in the same way, the blob of tape here on the bottom would line up with the grooves and kick the stem at an angle. So what we have to do in cases like this is get creative. This doesn't happen terribly often, but enough that you have to accommodate. If it's really curved, it's no issue at all. If it doesn't have the fishtail on it, then there's really no problem with what I'm going to do. But in this particular case, this is about a 9.2 on a 10 scale of difficulty for this particular setup I've got here, but it works just fine. You again wrap it with tape. It both protects it, makes it thicker, and we're going to do this same number with it, but it is deliberately, this ball of tape here is, or blob here, is wider than the fishtail is, so that when this gets clamped like so, we are able to determine there we go. Having a hell of a time seeing around the camera and the tripod, but it's better than not being able to see. Okay, so now this is opened enough that the fishtail is clear of the V-groove, and everything looks nice and square. So because all of the squeeze power here is at the top, in order to be able to put some pressure on the bottom without risking messing up the fishtail, I put a block of wood in there with some post-it notes as a shim, so that we can get some sufficient pressure on the bottom and the top without knocking things out of alignment. So it's a bit more work, but nothing onerous to it. It probably took me 8 or 10 minutes to set this drill up here. Alrighty, and I recommend that when you drill acrylic plastic like this, that you go very slowly. Around 260 is a good number. And clear the chip often. Just center it. Whoops. And there we go. Centered, firmly squoze. It's not going to spin, it's not going anywhere. And the airway is dead vertical. So we are ready to go. Okay, back at the bench, the battery ran out as I started in on the acrylic stem, and although the camera has courtesy built in, it flashes that it's running low before it shuts off. I was paying attention to the work. I didn't want to screw something up, so it just shut itself off, and I didn't even notice until it was finished. So anyway, we've got a hole in this guy, and we got a hole now in this guy. They are coaxial and centered, and all that's left to do at this point is you take these little Delrin insert guys. They're just a threaded rod with a hole in them, and put them in a blank piece of rod stock, and then clamp them. You can do this on lathe. You just cut that as if it is a standard stem. Just cut it to whatever size you need, and then from that point on, it's the glue up, the adjustment of the horizontal and vertical displacement of the stem. In other words, it's going to go up and down a little bit and side to side a little bit, like so. That can be adjusted once you've got this cut to size and it's fully inserted, and then you can tweak these threads with a file. and lower them slightly on one side or whatever you want to do. And then you texture it all over and put the stem on, let the glue dry, and it's as good as new. Actually, in this case, better than new, because the stem on this one would not break again the same way it did this previous time. So anyway, this was originally just going to be the how do you clamp weird shaped stuff, and kind of branched off into these other areas, but it's all relevant. You're workmen. This is not for mass consumption. This is for enthusiasts doing high-end work. But that's how I do it, and there you go. No secrets in this shop. Alrighty, that is it, and I've got a true pipe project in the on-deck circle that I should be getting to fairly soon. That will be a fun one. It's one of the ones that starts like it's like taking a wrecked car from a auto yard and turning it into a Cadillac. You'll like it, and several more that I'm trying to decide how practical they are to film them, but we'll cross those bridges when I get there. So that's it for now. As always, put any questions in the one spot design forum. Look on the playlist master menu, and you'll find a single video that's strictly for questions and answers. I looked out there just this afternoon, in fact, saw that there's 2 or 3 questions that I have not answered. Again, I've not been able to do this for a while, so I'll be getting caught up as soon as I can. So that's it. As always, thanks for tuning in. Be safe and enjoy working on pipes. Take care.